Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher. Let's crack on with some questions and see what we can get out of all the queries people have got for us. Firstly, recently on a web show, you said that looking at your damage numbers was irrelevant and you didn't like it anymore. And as we advance through the game, people will probably start to see that as well. But personally, I've been playing the game since TBC, and I love seeing my damage numbers and still do to this day. Do you think that makes me a noob in your eyes? No, dude, come on, man. No. It's a personal thing. It's a personal preference. I think for me, one of the big things that really drove me to just not care anymore about the actual physical number that comes from my spells is that I've seen my DPS change so stupidly over the years, from doing, you know, hundreds of DPS to the hundreds of thousands, that it becomes pretty apparent that your numbers are just relative. Your numbers are just absolutely relative. The individual number that you hit with a spell, it's really quite meaningless. And ultimately what I found when I was raiding, especially on some of the very busy, very complicated fights, is that my DPS numbers were actually just taking up screen space. And I didn't like that. A particular moment I remember was the Ascendant Council. The Ascendant Council Heroic, which was a particularly nightmarish fight to learn, had this section of a frozen orb that had to be dragged and kited by a certain player into a fire pit, and you had to be Johnny on the fucking ball with that because it could spawn right near you. It was actually faster than you could run, which means you had to be really quick on the ball about it, and the thing was fucking tiny, really small. So sometimes I would note that occasionally I'd just miss it by maybe a second or so while I was looking for it, and I noticed I just wanted more freedom on my screen. I wanted more space. I wanted only pertinent information to me. So by that point I'd realised that just because I hit, I can't even remember the relative numbers at the time, let's say a 50k obliterate, as I was raiding on a DK at the time. If I did hit 50k obliterate, that didn't mean anything. It just didn't sit well with me. Sure, I hit 50k in obliterate. I probably did 20 or 30 of them during the course of the fight. But overall, it's my overall DPS that matters. What was my final score? And that's not something I can get from... I'm not going to be adding up the individual numbers. I have an add-on for that. And I don't know, work that out for me. And what I don't need to see is that my Blood Plague ticked for a couple of K. Or my Frost K did... my Frost Fever did 30k or whatever. I just don't need to see that information. So I came to the decision that this information is just... it's useless to me, and therefore I was happy to get rid of it. The only reason I show it now, and I actually asked the question to the audience, is do you want to see the damage numbers? People are like, yeah, I want to see the damage numbers. I get it. I really get it. And if you look at a lot of the top-end raiders today, even in the best guilds in the world, a lot of them still have their damage numbers up there. They still get to see what they do. One of the big players, or big roles, that doesn't do that particularly anymore is healers. Healers just don't bother looking at what they heal for. They know which heal is the big one. They know which one is their AoE heal, and they don't particularly care because they can't do anything about what it's doing. And ultimately, it doesn't particularly matter. If you know the mechanics of the fight, then you know that during this weakened phase, you're going to be hitting considerably harder. And of course, certain people love seeing that kind of stuff. Seeing that, oh shit, I just did a 4 million execute or a 7 billion fucking attack. People loved fights like the Essence of Anger during the Reliquary of Souls encounter when it went balls to the wall and warlocks were hitting for crazy numbers. People love that stuff, and I get it. I really don't get it. I don't consider anybody a noob for enjoying their damage. No way, man. That would be nuts. I think it's just a personal preference at the end of the day. I certainly don't open a UI or open a video and go, God, this guy's looking at his damage numbers. What a loser. For my personal preference, I just think it takes up screen space for me. And I'm not bothered. I'm fully aware if a boss is immune or not because I know the fights. I know I shouldn't be DPSing him during this phase because I do no damage. It's pretty obvious that that happens. And I still have notifications on for new encounters. Remember, a big part of my playstyle is I don't like to look at the dungeon journal before I do any fight. For any guild. I'm serious. Even in Method, I did not look at the dungeon journal before we did a fight because I only get to experience that once. So I tend to turn on notifications like immune and things like that. And if it's the case that the boss will not take any damage, you've got to be damn sure someone's going to call out, remember this guy does no... you can't DPS this guy in this phase. And it's like, well, okay. But if I know when I can do maximum damage. I also think it kind of freed me up to know more about what was going on around me. Freed me up to check out the environment. Figure out when to actually change my playstyle to incorporate better moments of AoE, which would increase my overall damage. Things like that. I just didn't need the clutter of the individual hits. It's a little bit of a distraction for me, but other people really enjoy that. They really, really enjoy that. Whereas I see it as, if I get more gear, I'm probably going to hit harder, right? The more gear I get, the harder I'm going to hit. And that's about it. And it's just always been that way. So for me, I just find it a little touch distracting. That's all. But for anybody else doing it, no, man. Enjoy your numbers. Enjoy the damage that you do. Why not? If you like seeing your massive chaos bolts dropping on fucking people's faces, cool, man. It's more enjoyment for you while you're playing. Next question is, on one of the AMAs you did after Drama Time, you said that you can obviously see the influence Titan has had over Warlords of Draenor. Can you expand on that a little bit? Yeah, it was a thing I was talking to with Ghosty before we went live. I think it was actually at the Transmog competition I was speaking to him. Is that Warlords of Draenor seems to have been heavily delayed. From the original plan when Mr. Pandaria launched, it seems to pretty much have been heavily delayed. And I started to think about, well, why does it seem to have gone wrong? And let's face facts, it has, right? The Warlords of Draenor release is just way out of whack with the schedule that Blizzard has been keeping over the course of Mr. Pandaria. Siege of Orgrimmar has clearly been out for far too long already. So what the hell has caused this problem? Surely you had a timetable and a schedule and everything was planned to be done here and there. Blizzard is obviously notorious for like, well, it's not ready, so we're not releasing it. That's fine. But we're running into months and months of time now, and you know, you got to think that something's changed here, something's not gone quite to plan. And then suddenly we get the most feature-rich, game-changing expansion in the history of the game. This is reverting the game and altering and iterating and innovating the game in a way we have never ever seen. People don't really seem to be grasping how game-changing Warlords of Draenor is. It's an enormous game-changing. Everything about the game is being altered. It's being changed and innovated, and then it's being iterated upon from other things. They're reverting some things back to what worked in the past. They're fully willing to drop ideas which didn't work. Then we remember that Titan was cancelled, and one of the big things that came out of that is a lot of the guys who were working on Titan moved over to the World of Warcraft team. They let a lot of people go, and then a lot of the big devs came back to World of Warcraft. And then you go, ah, I kind of get a picture of some of the things that were probably going to be in Titan, and now they're being put into Warlords of Draenor because Titan's not coming, which means WoW needs to have legs to run that little bit further. Now we're starting to see the fruits of that labor, and that is why WoD is so exciting, so hype. It's so big in my mind because I read these changes and I'm like, it's fucking clever. That's really clever. That's a good idea. You can guarantee that Titan was going to have a far more advanced system than what we're probably going to get in Warlords of Draenor, but because they still have to work within the Warcraft universe, but still the garrison system and all the ideas that went into there, it's not just an advancement of what we had with the Tillers, it's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new aspect of the MMO genre that they're putting into the game that's creating its own life, its own entity. It's not just a place you'll go and do a couple of dailies. This is a place where you'll be able to do an absolute multitude of cool things. It's a huge leap, and you can guarantee that Titan probably had that from the ground up and probably on a much larger scale. Things like not flying were discussed and tossed around, but you can almost guarantee that Titan was designed with that in mind. It's like, you know what we learned from World of Warcraft? Flying makes our world empty unless we really incorporate flying in some interesting way. Maybe Titan had that, but I guarantee you that Titan was very limited on the idea of personal flying and was really, really working on a way of making their world full and populated no matter which zone you were in. Because that's what people like bumping into people, like seeing things happening in the distance. They like to feel that when they play a massively multiplayer online game, is that it's massive and it's multiplayer, yeah? There's lots and lots of things going on. There is nothing better than seeing a really heavy populated area in an MMO. You're just like, look at how many people are actually rocking around this world. Again, influences of Titan. A lot of the PvP changes, you can probably say, were influences from Titan. And a lot of the stuff that they were planning for WoD, which I kind of have in the back of my mind, maybe WoD was going to be a little bit lackluster at first. One of the big problems people have with WoD when it was initially announced is that it seemed to not have anything going for it at all. Features were just not there. People are like, WoD doesn't seem to have anything. We seem to just have this mention of garrisons and that's about it. And from then to now, garrisons and all the other features that are coming in here, the changes to raiding, the idea of the full flexi system has been shoehorned in, and it's a brilliant, wonderful idea, and they're getting so strict on things like gear, how it's going to be given to people, the different looks and styles it's going to have. It's a total game changer to anything we've had in World of Warcraft before, and I can guarantee you these were things that were going to come in Titan. They might have thought here's an idea for you. They might have thought, it's like, we can't really make these changes to World of Warcraft. People are too used to having the safety net of like Raid Finder, and you kind of look the same, so it's not too bad. All this nice transmoggy stuff and all that stuff. Where in Titan they were like, you know what? Let's just change the gear completely for the top-end stuff. Let's just make it so the top-end guys are a little bit different and give a little bit of inspiration. I know a lot of people read messages like that, or what they like to hear is excluded, made to feel bad because you're not in that stuff. The way I think your mind actually works there is that I kind of need to give that stuff a try. Maybe it's actually quite cool. And then I can have a chance at getting that stuff and being one of those people, and being amongst that crowd would be really nice. And then suddenly you try it out and you're like, okay, this is what raiding's all about. I know not everybody can raid. I'm not stupid. But inspiration is a big part of it. Big inspiration is to see what the other guys are doing. You can look at footballers in the same way. As the little kid on the street still wants the same boots or whatever that David Beckham or whoever's a good footballer these days wears. Similar sort of thing, a little bit of inspiration is I want the gear, I want the kit, and then maybe I can move up to their level of play, and maybe I could take part in a big football game and all that kind of stuff. I really think that Titans had, or the Titan developers have brought with them a whole fucking suitcase of ideas. Likely we've only seen a glimpse of them in Walls of Draenor, but certainly some of that influence has gone, they probably sat down and said, what can we put into Walls of Draenor? This is our kind of timetable. What can we take that we were going to put into Titan and put into Walls of Draenor? Is there anything we can get in there? Well, we had this whole build your own empire kind of thing, which turned into the real big evolution of garrisons. We definitely wanted to repopulate the world, or we wanted to start Titan with the idea that it's very populated and keep it that way, instead of what we did in World of Warcraft, which is we had a heavily populated world, which we did. Vanilla was full of people. In every zone you were bumping into people because they were all on the ground. They were all on the ground, they were all doing their thing. They weren't flying from quest to quest. And we're going to start that from the ground up, and we're not going to take it away. As in World of Warcraft, we took it away in TBC, it started there, and then by now, by Mr. Pandaria, the only people who are literally populating our brand new zones are the people who can't fly and are now just cannon fodder for the big levels. And they were going to build that from the ground up. At least that's my kind of theory on that. I'd love to see your thoughts on that. Alright guys, I'll see you later. Bye.